I'd like to ask about the renewable portfolio standard. My understanding is it's set at 40%. It has been in the news this week, looking like it might not be met in the upcoming year. But my understanding is that it has been met roughly, the 40% renewables. So can you speak to how the funding will work for, I understand that there's an expression of interest out for, I think it's 220 megawatts of renewable, 50 megawatts of storage. So can you speak to how that works?
That will go out in the form of an expression of interest. That's the preliminary stages, and at that point, the interest will most likely determine what kind of a project that we're looking at. And again, energy is everyone turns on the same switch and gets the same light bulb, but the generation of it is very unique in all of the different projects. So the funding, whether it's in partnership with the utility, whether it would be private sector driven, all of those initiatives as it relates to how it will come to pass, whether it be a PPA that comes, through the utility, they'd be very site or project specific as they come forward with what the model would be on funding for them.
Okay, so if NB Power is meeting the 40%, so these new potential projects wouldn't be able to be funded by NB Power. Is that accurate?
Well, now, NB Power recently, as you're aware, we did some changes to the Electricity Act. So we have given the utility the ability to, through holding companies, create opportunities to create an entity with which something could be funded and or generate profit. But again, we need to dial in on specific projects to determine exactly how that flows through.
Was there anything else? No. Okay.
My deputy indicated that most likely that they'll procure the power, and like they would procure the power from somebody else. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess I'm wondering, would these types of projects, if we're at the 40% limit, it sounds like there's the holding company option, would they be dependent on federal funding, for example? I'm wondering if the 40% hasn't gone up.
Yeah.
As we thought it would.
Yeah.
A long time ago, I found a document that was saying, well, once LaPro's back online, we'll be at 75% for the RPS from about a decade ago. So can you speak to that? Because 40%, it's not where we need to be.
Is the question, do we want to see that ceiling increased? Is that what the question would be?
That's part of the question.
Yeah, well,
and do we require federal funding? And yeah, do we need to increase the 40%?
Yeah, I think that as we evolve and we see more of the ability for us to procure and implement renewables into our system, yes, absolutely. As we see Point LaPro work towards achieving higher levels of performance and accomplish that percentage output, I think that the natural progression is, and as we close the gap on the 19% of emissions through fossil fuels right now, we have the ability to increase that because we're going to need to generate it. The input will be there, so the output and the percentage could be adjusted. Whether that requires federal funding or not, I would say that the federal government has initiated and launched a number of the initiatives that are requiring us to comply with all of these programs and whatnot. And my experience with them is that they understand that, and they're also going to be a partner as it relates to accomplishing the funding component of it. Because I've had many meetings with the Minister of Enercan, and there's very much an openness there and a willingness to realize that as we embark upon these projects to clean up our electricity grid, to clean up our emissions, that it has to be a collaborative effort. There has to be some sort of a federal-provincial partnership as it relates to accomplishing those goals.
And so specifically going back to the 40%, I think I heard you say, yes, it needs to be increased. So what kind of benchmarks do we have? What kind of timelines?
Short answer is I don't know, and I don't like saying I don't know, but when it's the truth, that's what it has to be. We're working through all of that there right now because, as we said, there's a bunch of changes taking place. As we said, we've acknowledged and recognized that Point Lepreau has to perform at a higher level. That's going to have an effect on it. We've acknowledged that we've got an expression of interest out there for an influx of more renewables. So that's going to all have to kind of come into the machine and come out the other side with some numbers that we don't have. That cake isn't baked at this particular moment. I would agree that that increase needs to go up. I don't know what that is. I would agree that federal partnerships are going to be involved in it, but I don't specifically know what that will look like until we start framing up that a little bit better.
Okay, and I guess we wouldn't, I'm not saying to turn down federal money, but we wouldn't necessarily need federal partnerships, and we wouldn't need to worry about that if we were to increase that, that amount. I guess I hear you're saying you don't know. I guess it'd be nice to have some ambitious targets or timeline on that.
No,
yeah.
Absolutely, and we will ultimately bring that into some more specifics for sure, but I'll never turn down federal funding.
So I want to ask about energy efficiency. Also wondering, are we being ambitious enough? Are we where we need to be? And I would say no, I think you'd agree. Are we moving fast enough to where we need to go in terms of funding energy efficiency? And there is some specific language specifically around making it more accessible. I guess I'm not saying you're doing nothing, I know that, but I would argue it's not enough. Why not increase the funding to ensure more people have access to, for example, the heat pump program and energy efficiency renovations and efforts?
Absolutely, I would agree that we need to be faster. I agree, 100%, and I'm putting pressure on all sorts of seams and areas where the rivets are starting to bulge the whole time. Funding, of course, is what I want it to run at is it should only be limited by the speed of how we can fund it. We're the funder in government, so you know we work through some stuff with the contractor network. We get that straightened around. Any contractor in the province of New Brunswick that wants to participate, if they're legitimate, can. Green light there. We want to make sure that it's a simple process on the intake for the citizens of the province of New Brunswick. You know, there's some issues there that we're working through to make sure that that gets done in a more timely fashion. The funding, we earmarked funds over the next 2 or 3 years, but that's not going to be enough. We're going to have to put more funds into it. We saw that the recent announcement on the carbon tax backstop is going to require even more creativity as it comes to finding funds to invest in that. I mean, good fiscal management and continuing to see balanced budgets with surpluses give us an option to sit at that table. I know that sitting at that table, for all of my colleagues, that's a commitment that's been made that's going to have to be delivered on, and we're going to have to be creative about it. But again, it's money, and we need to be creative on everywhere we can find it. At the same time, you know, the government is coming up with a number of different other initiatives, whether it be tax income brackets, the student loan debt, and that's not related directly to this program, but that pot gets squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. So we got to be careful how we go about doing it. But I'm all for trying to find more and investing in it. Absolutely.
And the thing is that there is a high ROI on energy efficiency. It's good for the local economy, it reduces the energy demand, it saves people money in their homes, it's just win, 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 win. And I heard you say the other day sort of, oh, well, we don't have $1 billion to invest in energy efficiency, giving everyone a heat pump. Well, looks like you might actually. And so I'm wondering, why not have more ambitious targets written into here? Why not have more funding for energy efficiency? since we all are agreeing, everyone who's spoken to this is so, so important, why not fund it more? Because we know it's only, what, about 3,700 people a year who are going to be able to access the heat pump program. Like, why not ramp that up?
Well, we got targets that go out multiple years on it, and, you know, we could look at numbers in a very simplistic fashion and say, well, yeah, actually, we've got $1 billion kicking around. But I come from a family with siblings, and if my parents came to the table with the amount that they were giving us as an allowance, so to speak, and I took my brother's piece, he wouldn't be very happy with it. And that $1 billion is not just an amount that could be directed in any particular area.
And I'm not saying $1 billion would go directly to this, but part of it could.
Yeah, well, yes, absolutely. And I agree with having that conversation, and that's incumbent upon me sitting around the table and raising the voice and saying, I think that we need to do more. And we will have to, as a government, fund that. We're committed to it. From the Premier's perspective, from the Minister of Finance, and from myself. So at the end of the day, essentially what we did is said, we could navel gaze forever and a day until we have everything all lined up, or we can launch an initiative and start. And every one of those homes that gets converted is a New Brunswicker that's getting some form of a relief, less carbon that's going into the atmosphere, and a move in the right direction. But it's going to continue, and you're absolutely right. It's going to require all hands on deck and a deliberate effort to fund those initiatives with more resources.
More resources for energy efficiency, absolutely. And this is something I've been calling for years. I was calling for people to give heat pumps. If we don't stop
agreeing on everything, I don't know what's going to happen.
But we are agreeing more. Okay, so we're hearing Minister Holland's going to fight for more resources to ramp up energy efficiency. So I like that. And in here, I didn't get a lot of answers yesterday when Minister Holland was here. And one of the questions I was told to ask to you, so I'm going to do that. In the previous plan, there was something about PACE, wasn't completed. And here, in the new plan, it's talking about ensuring New Brunswickers have equitable access to energy efficiency programs through long-term financing and/or payment mechanisms by 2024. And so I was asking, is that PACE basically that you're talking about? Is it something else? What are you talking about? What is going to be available? And how, I guess, how ambitious is it going to be? Are there clear targets and benchmarks for how much access you're going to give to New Brunswickers to improve their energy efficiency?
Well, first of all, Minister Land's pretty shy, so
I've noticed that.
I don't want to endeavor to speak for him. PACE could be an option for that, absolutely. We don't have that defined in the form of specifics.
When is it going to be defined?
That's the coming year. Yeah. We'll have that within the coming year.
Within the coming year?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I will move on then. Sorry, I've lost my sheet of paper here. I guess I'm wondering if you can speak to the role of your department in terms of energy efficiency, not just for homeowners. So it sounds like there may be a program like PACE coming. You're committed to increasing resources and getting more resources for energy efficiency. Can you speak to your role in terms of, government buildings, in terms of other types of energy efficiency, please?
I sure can. And that's something that we have been working on. We started scratching our heads. You got to remember the Department of Energy was a very limited group of people, right? Essentially, for example, the province of Saskatchewan has I believe, double-digit staff working on SMRs, and they have no nuclear footprint. in Saskatchewan. So when you compare the resources that we have historically had about energy in New Brunswick, they've been limited, and they've been a few and far between. So we've worked hard to add resources as it relates to subject matter experts, technical people, but we started last year with the forming of the SMR Secretariat, which we knew we had to coordinate and do. Oh, go ahead, David.
Okay, sorry, my question was about energy efficiency.
Well, that's what we're going to do, is by creating this, we evolve that into the Energy Secretariat, with which now we funnel every opportunity, not just necessarily a homeowner, but what opportunities do we have on the grand scale for energy efficiency, and how do we position ourselves as a department and almost as a broker to find out what we need. So we're looking there saying, energy efficiency, what do we need? Do we need something from ONB? Do we need something? So we're basically quarterbacking energy efficiency initiatives with whatever resources we need through our department, the utility, other areas of government, and I'm not sure if that's fully fleshing out your answer, but we are open for business on any new existing and completing the energy efficiency initiatives that we're embarked upon.